Yeah, well, it's good that you can talk about that, your wife's had an influence on your fathering.
Absolutely.
Right?
Well, she grew up without a father.
Okay.
And so interesting enough, she grew up without a father, and she knows the pain that causes. And so she's committed to making sure that her children have a father. Now, luckily for me, it was a situation where, well, of course, I'm going to be there, and of course I'm going to, be an active father. But at the level, I think she's more sensitive, and women by nature, I think, are more intuitive. And so early, I think she could detect earlier that I was kind of spending a little bit too much time away from the home. And the kids were small, so I kind of justified it, saying, they're infants, they don't really know when I'm there anyways. And when they get older, I'll pull back, and then they turn 6 months, you don't pull back. 12 months, they don't pull, 2 years, and you still haven't pulled back. And that was kind of the aha moment to say, listen, you can't be all over the world and be a good father. You just can't. Now, if you have to, that's one thing. But luckily, I've been blessed with flexibility, and I exercise it. I do what I call kamikaze traveling, where I hit a city. I do 5-6 meetings, and I hop on a plane back, and spend time with the family. And if they can see me in the morning or in the evening, I feel like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
You're present, right?
Yeah, and then never travel on the weekends if you can help it. That to me has been something very, very special. But it's probably one of the reasons I'm tired coming off the weekends as well, because daddy's on, Saturday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and
right.
but it's good. It's good. It's a lot of learning.
Well, our wives should meet, because when my wife wants to get my attention, she's been known to say, "Hey, Mr. Fatherhood," which is like,
That's right.
Okay, got it.
That's right.
It's
That's
like
right.
a 2x4.
That's right.
And
That's right.
her point is, hey, you're out there trying to make a difference in all these other people's lives. What about your own kids?
No, that's right. That's right.
And I think that, it's not a wake-up call so much as it is, hey, just remember what your priorities are, right?
Right.
We've got some responsibility here. And I think it is important to, if you're in that situation, to be raising kids as a couple, right? Whether you're married or not, that's sort of secondary.
That's right.
But it takes two parents to raise kids, right?
That's right.
And you can get through periods of time, hopefully shorter periods of time, not longer periods of time, where you are relying on one parent to do most of the parenting. But that's not the long-term solution, right? And we talk about this a lot. It's known in the media as the breakdown of the family, or
right.
A lot of kids are being raised in single-parent families, which is a code for single mom families. And not to be too provocative, but when you strip it all back, what we're talking about is men just abdicating their responsibility to their kids.
Right.
Right? And it's not a value that men across the board hold as one of the most important things in their lives. So if you didn't grow up with a dad, like you were saying, there's a lot of kids that grow up without dads. You don't even know.
So let me ask you a question. Is there a generational shift happening? Because, and maybe it's just my friends or the circles I run in, but it really seems, I think about my dad, and my dad was a fantastic father, but he was definitely an old school father. Probably in the last 10, maybe 5 years, we've started to say, "I love you," right? But I always knew he, yeah,
you
my
and your
father
dad.
and I, right? But I mean, I always knew he loved me. I mean, that was,
You didn't have to
never
say
a
it.
question, right?
Yeah.
But it feels like my friends in my circle, we're all very in tune to our families. Very in tune to our families. Like, I'll give you a real basic example. When I was growing up, when we had family gatherings, the kids would be in the room with the women, right? And the fathers would be wherever the fathers were, right? Basement, out back, wherever, right? But that's not how my family is, or my friends' families either. I mean, it's pretty much kids ripping and running all around,
Right.
and dads on the ground wrestling with the kids, very interactive. And when I get together with my friends, we have these kind of conversations. How do you be a better father? we have to spend more time, and how do you listen? How do you do all these different things? I just can't picture my dad having those kind of conversations with his friends, back in the day. And so, is there a generational shift? Do the numbers point to that at all, or not?
Yeah, that's a good question. What the thought that comes to mind is that the expectations have changed. The role of men and dads in the family's life. Historically, going back a generation or maybe a couple generations, if you were a good provider, right, for your family, hey,
that was enough.
I'm doing
Right.
my job, right? I go to work, provide a decent place for my family to live, put food on the table, clothe my kids, try to provide for their education. Hey, you've met your obligation. Well, I don't know where that changed, but when our kids were born, going back 23 years ago, I think the expectation was that you were going to be in the delivery room,
be present.
right? You were going to be there, every step of the way. And it wasn't as if that was, unacceptable or hard to do, but I think there has been a shift or a change over the years. And
I wonder if it's to compensate, for the lack of fathers that are out there. We kind of see that, and we see the impact, and so we're overcompensating in a good way, for that. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I know in my situation I'm definitely overcompensating, right? And that's not to say that I'm a helicopter parent, dad that's hovering around and, always looking over somebody's shoulder. But, I think about it a lot, right? This is really important. And I feel like I'm holding myself to a higher standard. And it just feels good. And I think it's the right thing. Right? And that's not to say, I'm better than anybody else. It's just, when I look back, I don't want to look back and say coulda, woulda, shoulda. Right? And hopefully everything reconciles.
Yeah. And that's, I think the outcomes of it, it's interesting. When I went to your dinner, when was it? Last
June.
Last June, when I went to your dinner, to me, the most powerful part of it was when the kids got up and read, their letters or essays on why their father, uncle, or grandfather, or, male role model was important to them. I mean, that's powerful, and you don't get a chance. It's important, but you don't get a chance to hear it from the kids too often. Why it's important, and get them to kind of put it in perspective for you. And I think anyone who listens to their kids every day understands why it's more and more important that they engage with them. And I think that's a very, very powerful piece of what you do.
Oh yeah, well, it's more authentic.
That's
when
right.
it's coming from the words of youth.
That's right.
What their perspective on fathering is, and whether it's about their dad or their stepdad, granddad, or father figure when they're growing up without a male role model within their own family. And those are my heroes. Right. The guys that are, stepping up and trying to make a difference in the lives of others' children. You have an obligation as a dad. At least that's my way of looking at it. It's a responsibility, not a right. And if for whatever reason dad's not there and there's a stepdad, stepdads have a mixed, reputation.
Right. No, that's right.
And grandpas, are in a unique situation, right? They've had the experience before, and on average, they're retired. So now they've got the time. So when you combine the time with the experience, that's a great thing to have.
That's right.
Hopefully that's in addition to the dad, that there's a grandpa or two, right? And when there isn't any of the above, I'm impressed with men who see it as their responsibility to look out for that young woman or young man in their neighborhood, that they know aren't growing up with their dad, or maybe aren't getting that adult male role model in their lives. And maybe it's just inviting them over for dinner, maybe going out of your way, if it's at a sporting event and their parent's not there to, go up to them after the game and say, hey, you know, you did a great job,
No,
right?
that's
I'm
right.
really proud of you.
That's
Well,
right.
holy cow, you know, some of us didn't hear that from our own dads.
No, that's
so to
right.
hear it from somebody else, you know, you don't have to have a lot of contact, like you were saying, right? You know, that somebody's affirming who you are, right? That, you know, you're important. And, you know, people live for those moments.
That's right.
So.